My best friend lied to her rich boyfriend about the baby's father, so I showed him one thing she forgot to hide. I'm 28, and for the past 15 years, I thought my best friend Vanessa was someone I could trust with my life. We met in middle school when her family moved to our small town, and she was the new girl who needed a friend. I was shy and bookish, while she was outgoing and confident, but somehow we just clicked. Throughout high school and college, we were inseparable, sharing secret dreams and supporting each other through every milestone. Vanessa always had bigger ambitions than our little hometown could satisfy. She talked constantly about moving to the city, finding a rich husband, and living the glamorous life she felt she deserved. I admired her confidence and determination, even when her plans seemed unrealistic to someone like me who was content with simple goals and honest work. She had this magnetic personality that drew people in, and I was proud to be her closest friend. After college, I stayed local and became a teacher, while Vanessa moved to the city to pursue her dreams of wealth and status. She worked various jobs in marketing and public relations, always networking and positioning herself in circles where she might meet successful men. She'd call me every few weeks with updates about fancy parties, business dinners, and the wealthy men she was dating. About 2 years ago, Vanessa hit what she considered the jackpot when she met Nathan, a successful venture capitalist who was worth millions. Nathan was everything she'd been looking for: handsome, educated, wealthy, and from an established family with old money connections. He lived in a penthouse apartment, drove expensive cars, and traveled internationally for both business and pleasure. From the beginning, Vanessa positioned herself as exactly the type of woman Nathan would want. She claimed to come from a more privileged background than our middle-class reality, and carefully crafted stories about private schools and family wealth that simply weren't true. She hired an image consultant, bought expensive clothes with credit cards, and completely reinvented her persona to match Nathan's social expectations. I was initially concerned about all the lies Vanessa was telling, but she convinced me it was just about making a good first impression. She said that once Nathan fell in love with her, the details about her background wouldn't matter because he'd see how perfect they were together. She promised that she'd gradually reveal the truth about her real family and upbringing once their relationship was more secure. But instead of becoming more honest over time, Vanessa's deception grew more elaborate. She created fake social media profiles showing a lifestyle she'd never lived and hired actors to play her parents at events where Nathan might meet them. She studied wine, art, and classical music so she could participate in conversations about topics that mattered to Nathan's social circle. The relationship progressed quickly, with Nathan completely smitten by the woman he thought Vanessa was. Within 6 months, they were living together in his penthouse, and Vanessa had quit her job to focus on charity work and socializing with other wealthy wives and girlfriends. She seemed to have achieved everything she'd ever wanted. During this time, Vanessa would still call me regularly, but our conversations felt different. She'd talk about her fabulous life with Nathan, but seemed stressed and anxious underneath the excitement. She was constantly worried about maintaining her facade and would ask me to cover for her if Nathan ever called, asking questions about her past. I was becoming increasingly uncomfortable with being part of her deception. Then, about 18 months into their relationship, Vanessa told me she was pregnant. She was thrilled because she saw this as securing her future with Nathan, who'd mentioned wanting children someday. She said he was excited about becoming a father and was already talking about marriage and making their relationship permanent. Everything seemed to be falling into place for her. But during one of our phone calls, Vanessa let something slip that made my blood run cold. She mentioned being worried about the timing of the pregnancy and hoping Nathan wouldn't do the math too carefully. When I pressed her for details, she tried to backtrack, but eventually admitted that there was a possibility Nathan might not be the father. According to Vanessa, she'd had a brief affair with a former coworker named Marcus during a rough patch in her relationship with Nathan about 2 months before she got pregnant. She claimed it was just a one-time mistake that meant nothing, but the timing made it impossible to be completely certain about paternity. However, she was convinced the baby was Nathan's and didn't see any reason to complicate things by mentioning her uncertainty. I was horrified that Vanessa would let Nathan believe he was going to be a father without being completely honest about the possibility that the child might not be his. When I suggested she should tell him the truth or at least get a paternity test, she became defensive and accused me of trying to sabotage her happiness. She said she knew in her heart that Nathan was the father and that some things were better left unsaid. Vanessa's pregnancy progressed smoothly and Nathan was everything she could have hoped for as an expectant father. He immediately started planning for their future together, talking about marriage proposals and looking at houses in exclusive neighborhoods where they could raise their family. He hired the best doctors, arranged for private birthing suites, and spared no expense in preparing for what he believed was his child. The elaborate baby shower that Nathan threw for Vanessa was featured in society magazines and attended by influential couples from their social circle. Vanessa looked radiant in designer maternity clothes, accepting congratulations and expensive gifts while playing the role of the perfect expectant mother. Watching her bask in the attention and luxury made me increasingly uncomfortable about the lie she was perpetuating. During her 7th month, Vanessa called me in a panic because Nathan had surprised her with a romantic proposal during a weekend trip to Paris. The engagement ring was worth more than most people's annual salary, and the proposal was everything she'd ever dreamed of, complete with photographers capturing the moment for posterity. But instead of being purely happy, she seemed terrified about the implications. Nathan was now more invested than ever in their future together and was making plans that assumed the baby was definitely his biological child. He'd already started a college fund, updated his will to include the baby, and was talking to lawyers about adoption procedures to ensure his parental rights were legally protected. The deeper his commitment became, the more impossible it would be for Vanessa to ever reveal the truth. I tried once more to convince Vanessa to come clean before the baby was born, but she shut down the conversation immediately. She said she'd made her choice and that I needed to either support her or stay out of her life completely. She claimed that Nathan would never find out and that what he didn't know couldn't hurt him. She seemed to genuinely believe she could maintain this deception forever. The baby was born on a Thursday morning in March, and Nathan was present for the delivery, holding Vanessa's hand and crying tears of joy when he first saw what he believed was his son. He immediately started calling family members to share the news and posted photos on social media announcing the arrival of his heir. Watching him experience that pure happiness while unknowingly being deceived was heartbreaking. Nathan named the baby Alexander after his grandfather and lavished attention on both mother and child. He hired a team of nannies, took extended paternity leave, and documented every moment of Alexander's early development. He was completely devoted to his new family and talked constantly about the legacy he was building for his son. But I noticed something during my visit to see the new baby that Vanessa apparently missed. Alexander had distinctly different features from both Vanessa and Nathan, particularly his eye color and facial structure. While newborn features can change significantly, I couldn't help but notice similarities to Marcus, whom I'd met several times when Vanessa was working with him. When I mentioned my observations to Vanessa, she became hostile and accused me of looking for problems where none existed. She said babies often looked different from their parents initially and that I was being paranoid and destructive. She warned me not to share my concerns with anyone, especially Nathan, who was completely happy and bonding with his son. Over the following months, Nathan's attachment to Alexander grew even stronger. He was a devoted father who structured his entire life around his family's needs. He bought a larger house in an exclusive neighborhood, hired the best childcare money could buy, and started making business decisions based on what would be best for his son's future. Every choice he made was motivated by love for a child who might not actually be his. Meanwhile, Vanessa seemed to be struggling with maintaining her deception while caring for a newborn. She was anxious and defensive whenever anyone commented on Alexander's appearance or development. She'd quickly change the subject if people mentioned resemblances or lack thereof, and seemed constantly worried that someone might notice something that would raise questions. During one particularly difficult conversation, Vanessa admitted that she sometimes wondered about Alexander's paternity herself, but said it was too late to change anything now. Nathan was completely committed to their family, and revealing the truth would destroy everything they'd built together. She convinced herself that being a loving father was more important than biological connection, and that Nathan was better off not knowing. But the weight of the secret was clearly taking a toll on Vanessa's mental health and our friendship. She became increasingly isolated from her old life and paranoid about anyone who knew her before she reinvented herself. She started avoiding my calls and making excuses when I tried to visit, claiming she was too busy with her new responsibilities as a mother and fiancée. About 6 months after Alexander's birth, I was helping Vanessa move some of her remaining belongings from storage into Nathan's house when I discovered something that would change everything. Hidden in a box of old photos and documents was a paternity test that Vanessa had secretly taken when Alexander was 3 months old. The results clearly stated that Nathan was not the biological father. I stared at the document in complete shock, realizing that Vanessa had known for months that she was letting Nathan raise another man's child. The test showed a 0% probability that Nathan was Alexander's father, which meant Marcus was definitely the biological parent. Vanessa had concrete proof that she was perpetrating a massive deception against the man who loved her and was planning to marry her. When I confronted Vanessa with the test results, she broke down and admitted that she'd been living with the knowledge for months. She said she'd gotten the test done because she needed to know the truth for her own peace of mind, but claimed she couldn't bring herself to destroy Nathan's happiness by revealing it. She begged me to pretend I'd never seen the document and to never mention it to anyone. Vanessa explained that she'd considered telling Nathan the truth initially, but had realized how much he'd invested emotionally and financially in their family. She said he was genuinely happy being a father, and that taking that away from him would be cruel, especially since he'd never wanted anything more than to have a family of his own. She convinced herself that she was protecting him by maintaining the lie. But I could see that living with this secret was destroying Vanessa from the inside. She was anxious, depressed, and constantly worried about the truth coming out. She'd lost weight, was barely sleeping, and seemed to be on the verge of a nervous breakdown. The perfect life she'd worked so hard to create was making her miserable because it was built on such a fundamental deception. I tried to explain to Vanessa that Nathan deserved to know the truth and make his own decisions about his future. She was denying him the right to choose whether he wanted to raise another man's child, and was basing their entire relationship on a lie that would eventually destroy them both. Every day she waited to tell him would only make the eventual revelation more devastating. Vanessa became desperate and paranoid, believing that I was going to expose her secret. She started monitoring my social media, checking to see if I'd had any contact with Nathan, and generally treating me like a threat rather than a friend who was concerned about her well-being. Our 15-year friendship was crumbling under the weight of her deception and the moral position she'd put me in. The situation became even more complicated when Nathan started making plans for their wedding, which was scheduled for the following spring. He was spending hundreds of thousands of dollars on what he described as the celebration of their perfect family, and was involving Alexander in every aspect of the ceremony. He'd even commissioned a portrait of the three of them to hang in their new home. I realized that I couldn't continue being complicit in Vanessa's deception, especially as Nathan's emotional and financial investment in the lie continued growing. Every day that passed was another day he was being robbed of the truth about his life and his future. He was making major decisions based on false information and had a right to know what he was really committing to. But I also knew that directly telling Nathan would end my friendship with Vanessa and potentially make me look like a troublemaker who was trying to destroy a happy family. I needed to find a way to reveal the truth that would be undeniable and wouldn't require me to actively betray Vanessa's confidence. That's when I realized that Vanessa herself had provided the perfect solution. The paternity test document was concrete proof that couldn't be argued with or explained away. If Nathan happened to discover it himself, he'd have all the information he needed to make his own decisions about his future. I wouldn't have to say anything or make accusations. I'd simply have to ensure that Nathan found the evidence that Vanessa had carelessly left where someone could discover it. My opportunity came when Nathan called me asking for help planning a surprise birthday party for Vanessa. He wanted to create a photo collage using pictures from throughout her life and asked if I could help him gather images from her childhood and college years. He specifically mentioned wanting to look through her stored belongings to find photos and mementos that would make the display more meaningful. I agreed to help with the project, knowing it would give me the perfect opportunity to ensure Nathan discovered the paternity test results. During our search through Vanessa's storage boxes, I made sure to direct Nathan's attention to areas where important documents might be hidden. I suggested we look through everything carefully to make sure we didn't miss any special memories. When Nathan opened the box containing the paternity test, I watched his face change from excitement to confusion to horror as he processed what he was reading. The document was clear and unambiguous, stating that he had zero probability of being Alexander's biological father. He stared at the paper for several minutes like he couldn't believe what he was seeing. Nathan's first reaction was to question whether the test was legitimate or if there had been some kind of mistake. He examined the document carefully, checking dates, signatures, and laboratory information to confirm its authenticity. When he realized it was genuine and recent, he sat down heavily, looking like someone had punched him in the stomach. I pretended to be as shocked as he was when he showed me the test results. I acted like I had no idea such a document existed and was horrified to learn that Vanessa had been deceiving him about Alexander's paternity. Nathan seemed grateful to have someone to talk through his emotions with as he processed the magnitude of what he'd discovered. The conversation that followed was heartbreaking as Nathan tried to understand how the woman he loved could have lied to him about something so fundamental. He talked about all the plans he'd made for Alexander's future, the legal documents he'd signed claiming paternity, and the emotional bond he'd formed with a child who wasn't biologically his. He felt completely betrayed and confused about what any of it meant. Nathan decided to confront Vanessa immediately rather than trying to process the information privately. He wanted answers about how long she'd known the truth and why she'd chosen to deceive him about something so important. He asked me to be present during the conversation as a witness to whatever she might say. When Nathan presented Vanessa with the paternity test, her initial reaction was to deny that it was real or claim that someone had fabricated it to cause problems in their relationship. But when pressed for details about when and why she'd taken the test, she eventually broke down and admitted everything. She confessed that she'd known for months that Nathan wasn't Alexander's father, but had been too afraid to tell him. Vanessa tried to explain her reasoning, saying that Nathan was a wonderful father and that Alexander loved him completely. She argued that biology wasn't as important as the emotional bond they'd formed and that telling him the truth would only hurt everyone involved. She begged Nathan to forgive her and to continue their life together as the family they'd become. But Nathan was devastated by the scope of Vanessa's deception and couldn't understand how she'd been able to lie to him for so long about something so important. He pointed out that she'd let him make major life decisions based on false information and had stolen his right to choose his own future. He said that everything about their relationship now felt like a lie. The confrontation lasted for hours as Nathan demanded details about Marcus, when the affair had happened, and why Vanessa had chosen to deceive him rather than tell the truth from the beginning. Vanessa's answers only made things worse as Nathan realized how calculated and deliberate her deception had been. She hadn't just made a mistake, she'd actively chosen to build their life on a fundamental lie. Within a week, Nathan had ended their engagement, canceled the wedding, and started legal proceedings to establish his rights regarding Alexander. Even though he wasn't the biological father, he'd formed a strong emotional bond with the child and wanted to maintain some kind of relationship. But he was also consulting lawyers about the financial support he'd been providing and the legal implications of Vanessa's deception. Vanessa's perfect life collapsed completely as Nathan moved out and word of the situation spread through their social circle. The wealthy friends who'd embraced her as Nathan's fiancée suddenly became unavailable and invitations to exclusive events stopped coming. Her carefully constructed identity as a successful woman who'd married well crumbled along with her relationship. The most devastating consequence for Vanessa was losing not just Nathan, but also the luxurious lifestyle she'd become accustomed to. She had no income of her own, no real job skills that matched her expensive tastes, and a child to support without the financial resources she'd counted on. The reality of single motherhood without Nathan's wealth hit her harder than she'd ever imagined possible. Marcus initially wanted nothing to do with Alexander when Nathan's lawyers contacted him about paternity, but eventually agreed to take responsibility once legal pressure was applied. However, he had nowhere near Nathan's financial resources and couldn't provide the lifestyle that Vanessa had expected for herself and her son. Her dreams of wealth and status were completely destroyed. As for me, my friendship with Vanessa was over completely. She blamed me for Nathan discovering the truth even though she'd been the one careless enough to leave the evidence where it could be found. She couldn't accept that her own deception had caused her downfall and needed someone else to blame for the destruction of her perfect life. Looking back, I have no regrets about ensuring Nathan learned the truth. He deserved to know what his life was really built on and to make informed decisions about his future. Vanessa's deception was unsustainable and would have eventually been discovered anyway, but with even more devastating consequences the longer it continued. Today, Nathan has limited visitation with Alexander and has started rebuilding his life with a focus on honesty and genuine relationships. Vanessa struggles as a single mother while trying to co-parent with Marcus, who resents being forced into fatherhood. The fairy tale life she'd constructed through lies became a nightmare that destroyed everyone involved, including the innocent child caught in the middle of her deception.